Hello, everyone. Alan of the Rockies. Let's talk some Week 8 ABL. I want to start off with how despondent I personally am that my Rockies went 1-3 in the beginning of the week. I think I had even mentioned it to a couple guys. Man, I feel like might have an outside chance at going 4-0, at least 3-1, or at the very worst, splitting my week at 2-2. I even made the last ditch effort trade for Brad Keller to get that last start on Sunday, and I still end up going 1-3. So I am disappointed. This might have more to do with Strass leaving the game last night and looking the way he did. It's probably not looking great, but man, I just feel like there's a hump I cannot get over in this league, at least not this year. I don't know if it's going to happen for me. But enough about me. Let's check out the good and the bad for Week 8. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so it can be seen. Your 3-0 teams, the Mariners, the Padres, the Cubs, the Rays coming back from a couple tougher weeks to go 3-0. The rest of your undefeated, you got the Pirates, the Twins, and the White Sox all going 2-0. So the White Sox coming back from not a bad couple weeks scoring-wise, but a tough couple weeks schedule-wise. And Harry comes back and goes undefeated again. The Cardinals, despite how good they always are, managed to pick up a loss this week. The Tigers pick up a loss as well. A couple really, really nice teams, really good teams picking up losses. The Blue Jays go 2-1. The Red Sox go 2-1. The Dodgers, the Phillies, both taking a loss each, going 2-1. The Angels, again, having a good week, confounding my expectations of them, 2-1 for the Angels. A couple teams played only 2 games and split them both. The Yankees and the Marlins go 1-1 each. Your 1-2 teams, the Orioles, who I think beat me for their 1 win. The Mets, the Royals, who are coming on strong this week. The A's, the Rangers, the Giants, and the Braves all go 1-2. The Rockies are the only team to go 1-3. And you have a few 0-3s, the Reds, the Nats, the D-backs, and the Brewers go 0-3, and the Astros and the Indians go 0-2. A tough week for the Astros to go 0-2. So there's your quick win-loss breakdown. I'm disappointed in myself. I don't see too many other teams that really would probably be disappointed with themselves. Mark's maybe always upset to not go 3-0 or 4-0 or whatever it is. Dodger Joe, probably that was a tough loss. Anytime the Dodgers lose a game, that's probably a relatively tough loss compared to the rest of us. The Cardinals, same with the Cardinals and the Tigers. But, when good teams play good teams, somebody's got to lose. We can't have a tie every week, even though we had one in Week 7 and we nearly had one in Week 8, which gives us a delayed segue into showing the other stuff that I do here. Bam. All right, there we go. So let's do the rundown here. Your biggest, smallest, blah blah. Your biggest margin of victory was 200 points. Pittsburgh over the Nats, and I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong. I could look back, but I'm a lazy man. A 200-point victory is pretty rare. Maybe we've had a couple. I know we had a couple in the first scoring week, but that was a week and a half. On a given week, a 200-point drubbing is a hell of an ass kicking, and we know Washington's selling, so it's not like that's anything crazy or unexpected, but it's still a hell of a beatdown. And then right after that, Washington again getting clobbered by the Seattles, 197.33 points. So Washington on the receiving end, even had they not been dumping, playing Pittsburgh and Seattle in a given week is usually a recipe for a bad time, for that given opponent. So not really tough luck for Washington. They were probably going to lose anyway, but now this really just looks bad because they really got smoked. Number 3, the Cubs over the Cincinnati Reds, 192.33 points. Then a little bit of a gap between 3 and 4. St. Louis over Milwaukee, 174.67 points. And then Minnesota over Milwaukee at number 5, 164.834 points. So the same team appears 2 different times each on the biggest whooping list, the Milwaukee's and the Washingtons, with a little bit of Cincinnati's sandwiched right in the middle. The divisional game, the Cubs and the Reds. Divisional for St. Louis and Milwaukee too. So a couple of NL Central guys taking an ass kicking by their divisional brethren. Your smallest margin, the near tie, was the San Francisco Giants, the ownerless, at this time, I guess, I don't know if we knew for sure that Roger had been not really keeping up on the team. It was only pointed out to me by Duke himself. I had tried to send Roger a couple trade offers. I thought maybe he just didn't check the Discord very much, but he had been MIA for a while, and he was still MIA, and he still managed to barely beat the Diamondbacks by 0.334 points. So less than a half point separates the ownerless at the time. Ownerless because he paid. He technically was the owner, but now we welcome Josh into the fold, who will be, I think, much more active, and that will be much more appreciated by the other 29 owners in the league. But the rudderless Giants defeat the terribly injured, really, Diamondbacks. A lot of pitching injuries, even ones that he didn't already draft. So that's been a beat-up team. Less than half a point, almost down to a quarter of a point victory. And your number 2 slim margin was the Tampa Bay Rays over the Boston Red Sox. So Boston went 2-1. The Rays went 3-0. This very easily could have switched around, and Boston goes 3-0, and the Rays go 2-1. But a difference of 1.67 points, 1.666 points gives Tampa Bay the victory over Boston. So two really, really close games on the slim margin. We've been kind of seeing it. We've been seeing that with this many matchups, teams are playing 2, 3, and 4 teams each week. We're going to run into some very tight matchups week in and week out. Your number 3, Seattle over St. Louis. So the one loss that Jeff took was indeed to a very good team, and it was a really tough loss, and 3.5 points. So another one where, Tampa Bay 3-0, Boston 2-1 could flip that. Seattle went 3-0, St. Louis went 2-1. You could easily 3.5 points, a home run, an RBI base hit, whatever. You can flip that around. Seattle's 2-1 and St. Louis is 3-0. Then you have San Diego over Toronto in the 4 spot, 6.667 points, 6.67 points. So Toronto goes 2-1, and Mark running into it again. He easily could have went 3-0. Mark did up basically the strength of schedule rankings on their own, a little bit separate from the power rankings, and looked at also how many times each team was playing each team and such. And Mark has had some schedule misfortune, I guess you could call it. And here he shows up on the small margin list again. I know it's not the first time, to the San Diegos, who, yes, is a good team. Did just suffer his first real injury of the year with Captain Jack going down. Not sure if we can expect the Padres to make a move to try to address that issue. He's not going to replace Captain Jack. He's not going to replace a $40 pitcher, most likely, but you can probably, check your inboxes. I don't know that he 100% knows how to use the Discord, but check your inboxes. Hit up the Padres. He might be looking for an arm, maybe 2. Where the hell was I? Oh, rounding out the smallest margin of the week. margins of the week, the Philadelphia Phillies over the New York Mets by 7 points. So we have 5 games in week 8, all decided by 7 points or fewer. And I didn't write it down, but I think we had another one that was, or no, I did write it down. I didn't mark it on here, but we had also Pittsburgh over Detroit, 10.83 points. So another instance of those two Titan teams like Seattle, St. Louis, fighting it out, and somebody's got to lose. There's not going to be a bunch of ties. The Tigers, I don't think that is the first slim loss. I know the Tigers and the White Sox have ran into some losses lately that against most of the other teams in the league, they probably don't lose, but they play each other a lot. This week, Tigers are playing the Pittsburghs. So that's head-to-head. Your number one performing team on a per game basis this week, your points per game, was the New York Mets. They have the very slim loss to the Phillies, but the Mets were actually number one with 4.69 points per game this week, but in only 52 games. So Dwight had the right guys playing, but he just didn't have enough guys playing. And that'll cost you that cost him a 7-point win. If he averages 4.69 points in probably even 55 games, he gets the win over the Phillies. And I think Tyler said the Mets jumped up a few spots in the ranking in the power rankings this week. Maybe it could have even been a little more. Your number 2 points per game on the week, Pittsburgh. We're used to seeing a lot of these guys in the top 5 by now. Pittsburgh at 4.54 points in 72 games. Seattle, 4.5 points in 72 games. Minnesota at number 4, 4.38 points in 71 games. Tyler made a lot of moves very recently, and the Twins have been good already, as I mentioned on the Tony podcast, I think, but they get these additions like the Moncada, they get Bellinger back. This is a team to look out for, and he's showing it now. 4.38 points, number 4 overall in 71 games. Rounding out the top 5, St. Louis, almost on a weekly basis, 4.27 points in 75 games. So Jeff had the most games in the top 5, but lower on the list still is top 5. 4.27 points. A little bit of a gap between him and number 1. 4.69 to 4.27 is your top 5. And as we see right next here, the Minnesota 4.38 points per game, it was maybe largely buoyed by their pretty good hitting. Number 1 hitting week was Minnesota at 177 points, but look at the difference between, it's actually like the first, really all of it. Week 7 was a monster hitting week. You had the Dodgers at 218 was your number 1 team. Your number 1 team, or for week 7, I should say, your number 1 team for week 8 was 177 points by the Twins. And there's not a lot separating 1 and 2, Minnesota and Pittsburgh. 5 points separate them, 172 points for Pittsburgh. But in week 7, Pittsburgh was number 2 again with 204 points. So some pretty big gaps between the week 7 hitting and the week 8 pitching. Your number 3 hitting in week 8 was 163 points. Number 3 in week 7 was Philly at 201. So nearly a 40-point gap between the 3 spot in week 7 and week 8. Your number 4 team in week 8, the Dodgers, 156 points. Week 7 was Boston at 197. So it's still a 40-point gap being maintained. And your number 5, week 8, 149 hitting points is Detroit. Number 5, week 7 was St. Louis at 194. So week 7 was just a kind of a crushing hitting week, I guess, for everybody. Huge gaps between week 7 and week 8, but then the actual week 8 top 5 is 177 down to 149. So not a significant gulf there. Just overall hitting in week 7 was better. Over on the pitching side, it remains pretty consistent. Seattle Seth stepping up from his number 4 spot the 3 previous weeks to take the number 1 spot in week 8 with 183 pitching points. Number 1 in week 7 was 190.5 by the White Sox. Number 2, the St. Louis Cardinals. Used to seeing him on these lists every single freaking week. 178.5 pitching points. Number 3, the Detroit Tigers. And number 4, the Blue Jays. They both tied in pitching, 166.833 points, so tied for 3. And rounding out the top 5 is the Chicago Cubs at 166.5 points, just behind Detroit and Toronto. So Seth at 167.83 was number 4 last week, and number 3 and 3A was 166.83. Not much separation there, but he took a leap this week up to 183. And your number 5 spots staying very consistent with pitching, 166.5 this week, 163.67, 164 for week 7. But the hitting, number 5 this week, 149. Number 5 in week 7, 194. So big hitting week 7. Pretty much same pitching week in week 7 as week 8. Your points per game on the season, Seattle still claiming the number 1 spot. He did drop down a little bit, went from 4.36 in week 7 to 4.29 in week 8. The White Sox stay in the number 2 spot and drops down incrementally, 4.19 points a game to 4.18 in week 8. Dodger Joe stays in the number 3 spot, goes from 4.17 to 4.15. And Pittsburgh, Duke working his way up from the 5 spot up to the 4 spot and jumped an incremental point per game of 4.14 to a 4.15. And then Seattle kicks Detroit out of the top 5. So Detroit goes from 4.16 and the 4 spot to out of the top 5 as Seattle comes in at 4.07 points per game. So number 5 last week was Pittsburgh, 4.14. Number 5 this week, 4.07. So we're getting a little jumble at the bottom, and a little not even jumble, a little shuffle at the bottom. Detroit, I'm sure, has got to be right there. Maybe he's 406 or something. I can't imagine he took a giant dive down. And then some other stuff I threw on here, and just because I was feeling like it. Got your hitting season, pitching season, top 5s and bottom 5s. Maybe we ignore the bottom 5 a little bit too much. Not to like poke a stick at these guys, but it is what it is. It's just factual. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. It's just I feel like I always have I got the top margin, the slim margin, but then the rest is just like the top guys. I don't want to do the bottom weekly guys, but maybe we'll keep a running tab from week 8 on. See if a lot of this lower chunk here, this lower quadrant of the Excel sheet, if these names change much or at all from the rest of the season. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. A lot of these teams, in the top, you expect to be there. They're always in the points per game. A lot of them are always in the biggest margins of victory and the top 5 hitting, pitching, week in and week out. So you'd expect to see them here. Your number 1 hitting team on the season is the Los Angeles Dodgers, 1,641 points. So that's your high water mark through week 8. Arbitrary, but that's what it is. Number 2, Pittsburgh, 1,583. Number 3, Detroit. So a little bit of a jump here, about an 82-point jump from Pittsburgh to Detroit, 1,583 down to 1,501. St. Louis is your number 4 hitting team at 1,487. And then the Phillies. The Phillies rounding out the top 5, 1,431 points. And this has been with Kevin Biggio probably playing the entire time he was playing. It seems like he was playing hurt. And he's been without a lot of Bryce Harper as well. So the Phillies, I don't know, when I'm thinking about the big hitting teams, I don't know that the Phillies pop into my head. And I think he's got like a 60-point gap over the number 6 team. So imagine a healthy, good Kevin Biggio and a healthy Harper, we're probably talking about the Phillies maybe in the number 4, maybe challenging for the number 3 spot for overall hitting. Kind of surprises me, I guess. I don't know, not to disparage Adam, but it's just not. I didn't think of his team as a mashing hitting team. I know he's good. I know he's fighting for for the NL East. It's just not what I would have thought. Your season pitching, the White Sox, to not to my surprise, the teams in the pitching are pretty much the teams I would have thought to be in the pitching. Maybe not Detroit, but with as good as he's been, it doesn't surprise me that he's in both. The teams that are in both, the Cardinals, 4 in hitting, 3 in pitching. The Tigers, 3 in hitting, 4 in pitching. Your number 1 pitching team, the Chicago White Sox, 1,492.67 pitching points. Number 2, Seattle Seth, probably the guy I would have thought maybe number 1 or, has the run at number 1 before I looked at this stuff. Probably would have been Seattle and the White Sox, honestly. And Seattle's about 20 points underneath at 1,471 points. Dropped down a little bit to 1,427.5. The Cardinals, Detroit, 1,335. So a significant gap between 3 and 4 in the pitching points, 1,427.5 down to 1,335. And then Toronto Blue Jay Mark is right there behind the Tigers at 1,334, 1 point behind for the number 4 spot. They're going to take some doing to take over the 3 spot. But what you don't see, the thing that stands out to me, what you don't see in either of those lists, and I'm not picking, it's just you don't see the Padres. You don't see the Padres as a great hitting team. You don't see them as a great pitching team, but they stand atop the league standings. And I think losing Captain Jack we're going to see some instant what do you want to say, like regression, I guess, regression to the mean for the Padres if he can't somehow replace the production of Jack Flaherty. That's going to be a tough loss for that team to take, a team that had been walking on the edge of a razor blade with avoiding the injuries, and he got smacked with one the other day, and it's a big one, and it might end up hurting. You don't see him in the top hitting. You don't see him in the top pitching. He's got to be, probably top 10 in each. I could probably bring up the power rankings that Tyler works his ass off on, and Tyler and Lenny both. But again, lazy man. So just an observation. The top team in the league does not show up in the points per game on the season, the top hitting in the season, the top pitching in the season. I'm not picking him. He's my father. I like to give him shit. He's a good fantasy manager, but he's been fortunate, and he just got slapped with a branch of misfortune. So how he handles that is going to be big for the next, how long is Jack out? 4 to 6. It could be lights and oblique. These guys, I know I mentioned Woody Williams as a Cardinal fan. I remember Woody Williams being down at what seemed like for months with an oblique. For pitchers, the thing's got to be fully healthy, and they're not going to take any risk with Captain Jack. They're not going to run him out there early. So this could be fairly significant for the Padres, for the ABL Padres. Your bottom 5 hitting teams, and look at the gap. I know Cleveland hasn't been healthy, but look at the gap between Cleveland and the number 2. Cleveland, number 1, 729 points. Number 2, San Francisco, you jump 160 points to 890. So not only is Cleveland just not healthy, not able to field a full lineup, but man, they're really not able to. They're getting out hit even by the number 2 team, which was the rudderless Giants until now. And the waiting on prospects Milwaukee team, number 3, 891. So only 1 point separates them and the Giants. You jump up a little bit to number 4, Atlanta, at 909 points. And then kind of surprising to me, Oakland, the number 5 worst hitting team. But if you take a deeper look at Oakland, you see that he's been missing Brandon Nimmo for a significant chunk, Springer most of the year, Paul DeYoung for a good chunk. Max Kepler seems like even when he has been playing, he hasn't been especially healthy. So Oakland's probably the team that most doesn't deserve to be in the bottom five of the hitting. He just lost Ozuna, if not to injury. Well, he did lose him to injury, but if he didn't get hurt, I don't know. Does Ozuna go off on his wife if he doesn't, he hit her with the cast and stuff, the cops say. And a year ago, the wife was arrested for violence against Ozuna, I think. So this clearly is not a healthy relationship, but the cast came into play. If he doesn't get hurt, does he still go down for domestic violence? Who the hell knows? It seems like he's an asshole either way. It seems like he probably was going to be lost for the A's and for the real-life Braves either way. This is not a new thing for him. The injury's new. The crappy relationship, not new. So maybe chalk him up for losing him for some time anyway. But Oakland's not a team that deserves or will probably remain in the bottom five hitting points. Your bottom five pitching, the Texas Rangers at 601.17 pitching points. And I know for a fact he's got guys trying to pry Ryu away from him and deplete that even further. Cleveland showing up at number 2 on this list, 631.33 pitching points. Milwaukee, number 3 worst, number 3 from the bottom hitting, number 3 from the bottom pitching, 662.5 points. These are all very close together. Just like 4 of the 5 hitting, they're all right there. Like a big week from any of those guys can maybe pull them out. Same kind of with the pitching. You got Milwaukee, 662.5. San Francisco, rudderless. San Francisco hasn't been changing his starters. 665 points. And then Arizona, the very injured Arizona, 670.5 points. I imagine, bold prediction, Oakland's going to climb out of the bottom 5 of the hitting. Arizona is going to climb out, and probably San Francisco too, climb out of the bottom 5 of the pitching. Arizona, even if you take the guys that he drafted that were already hurt, like Severino, for example, he's lost Paxton, he's lost Carrasco, just one of those 2 guys healthy, and he's probably not in the bottom 5. So I think that fortune at least is going to turn around for some of those guys. We did have another flurry of trades that I would like to talk to somebody other than myself. I don't want to just give my opinion. I would love to get Lenny on here. Getting other guys on here is usually more my scheduling than anybody else's. Like, even though I pretty much never leave the house, I don't always get the chunks of time where I know I'm not going to be interrupted by someone or something. My wife has both of the clients at the doctor right now, so the only real risk I had was the stupid dog. This would have been a good time, but I kind of didn't really know that she was taking them both at the same time until about 20 minutes before it happened. I didn't want to hit Lenny up on short notice. I'd love to get him on here and talk about the Acuna deal. But we've had some other massive ones. I woke up to some just this morning. I woke up to the Blue Jays and Astros deal, the Cleveland. Who the hell with Cleveland? I know Wander Franco was involved, so that's a gigantic, probably the prospect name to move. So would like to do another one of these shortly. Maybe get on some of these other guys that I haven't had on before, but I know I've said that a lot of times and not actually done it. So, call me what you will. I'm a hypocrite, or I just don't like the idea of having somebody else sitting here and then I have to get up and help somebody go to the bathroom. And then it's just dead air, or I'm asking somebody to, hey man, sit here and talk for fucking 10 minutes while I hopefully show back up. Because I didn't have, I'm avoiding a slip and fall at the same time as getting somebody off the toilet. But that's your week 8. Pray for my Rockies. If Sixto shut down again, Strasburg injured, Captain Jack injured, we're having some big names continue to go down. No matter what, I'll be seeing you guys soon. We'll be back with week 9. As mentioned this morning, like, can you believe that we're just a couple games away from what would have been a 60-game slate like we had? It doesn't even feel like that year happened. I don't know if it's because I did so shitty in fantasy. I just want to forget it, but it really doesn't feel like it happened. It feels good to have normal baseball again. And I'll talk to you guys about it soon.